Hey gang, Kevin here, Life22, and it has been a hot minute since I got a chance to finish all my podcasts on the daily, handle all of the things that I have to handle in a day, and make our way through actually stopping and listening to Audible. So what's happened in the past is during COVID, I listened to like 30 some odd books, 33 books in the first year. And then I want to say it dropped to 20 because I started listening to and peppered in my podcast back in and added some new ones and yada, yada. Now I probably finish like 5 books a year. I really should get cranking on it. But every time I do a book, since like, I can't remember when, year 2 of listening to books on Audible, so like 2021. Since 2021 and 2022, I've been like reviewing. As most of you know, I review the books that I listen to. And it's not an in-depth review, it's just kind of my take on it, as most of you know. And I do audibles because I'm on the go all the time. So I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to books. And so I started 2 books, and then I had to take notes on one. So I was like, oh, put a pin in that. And so I'll be releasing that. I'm going to go take notes probably at some point here soon so I can continue listening to that. But this one, as most, if you watch the channel, you know I did a shout out to Mr. David Goggins. And with Dave, we were trying to get him on the show. And we like a lot of things that I do, I've got so many things going on that I'm like, oh, I got to do this, and then I don't have enough attention to the thing that I'm trying to do. So I wanted to do a campaign where we were like just like calling out David Goggins, and now he's on social media again. He was like, we went in and it was like he was hibernating, and so now he's out. And I just finished his book yesterday, his second book. So this is the Never Finished versus his first book, which is Can't Hurt Me. Now, I'm going to go through kind of like a chapter by chapter because I have the chapter list in front of me and kind of give you a brief synopsis of, you know, what the book goes into. But my overall take was it was a good book. It was definitely a sequel to the first. And so if the first book, if you didn't know who David Goggins was, which a lot of people don't, and then they're becoming more and more people, and they kind of just know who he is because of his races, because he was a SEAL, because he's been on, you know, all these different places. And he goes into like his backstory, his life story, and you know, early what created him foundationally as, you know, as a human being, and where he pulls his strength from, and little tactics and tips that he uses. And so the second book is kind of a continuation of that, with just more finite stories in where he, you know, later on in life, you know, how he made it through Moab, a race, and you know, how he, you know, persevered and pushed people to keep doing it, and how he just kind of goes with like a nope, fuck it approach, you know, like I'm doing it, we're going with it, we're going. And he does that in and out, which you've got to admire his strength, right? And he talks about, you know, some other stories, like he was, you know, how he just had surgery and he wasn't supposed to be, you know, running or jumping out of an airplane, and he's training for, you know, paramedics, and so it's a whole bunch of different things like that. In the second book, I would say it was just more of the first. It was more of the first, but with less of the details, with more details that you didn't know from the first. He interviews his mom. That was a big one in the book. There's just a bunch of things that, you know, he does in the book, and yeah, there's a whole pile of things that he does in this book that he didn't tell you in the first one, which obviously because he can't, right? He doesn't have to. But I feel like we already know who he is from the first book. So if you like David Goggins, you're gonna like this book. The sequel's never as great as the first, you know. So obviously, you know, the rabbit's out of the hat, right? This is David Goggins. This is where he pulls his strength from, and you just kind of get like the second one really like is just. It just tells you more stories of like how he works, how he decision makes. And I'm a big believer in decision making, right? So like every decision you make, every choice you make in life, and if you have a plan and a methodology behind you and how you make your choices, and if you make good choices. So if you just look at the world and like, if I just make a good choice, if I make the best choice available at the time, even if it's the most outlandish, and sometimes thinking outside the box is great, you should always end up on top. Like you may never end up on top, but you should. And that's where people go through this ebb and flow. They go up, and then they have a catastrophic, something happens, right? Because even your good choices can't prevent life from happening. And so, you'll experience failures and things like that, and you pick yourself back up and you grow from it. Because that's also a choice, right? Like, oh, I failed. Well, I better choose to pick myself back up instead of sit here and wallow. Yeah, that's that's kind of that's the book in a nutshell. It's more of David. And so if you're looking to see how he functions, to see how he does what he does, maybe pull some inspiration from it, pull some ideas from it, I would say start with his first book, move to the second book. If you do them back to back, you may seem that the second book's a little repetitive, but I mean, obviously you're getting to know a person, so you're going to get that. And then if you're going to draw strength of it, start applying it while you're doing the book. The first book actually has a roadmap to that. Like throughout the entire book, he does a hashtag like get hard, you know what I mean? Or hashtag can't hurt me. And throughout the entire thing, this one, I think it had it at the beginning. It wasn't as prevalent beating it into your skull as the first one was, like where you were like, get on social media and tell me can't hurt me. And so like I did it the entire first book, and he actually responded to a couple of them. And I thought that was interesting. That's why I thought, man, it would be great to get David Goggins on the show. So let's see. And now for our... So obviously opening credit, Joe Rogan gives him a blurb at the beginning. His mom, Jacqueline Gardner, gives him a blurb. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson gives him a blurb. This is the dedication, warning order, introduction, and then we go into chapter 1 all the way through chapter 8. Nope, chapter 9. Okay. So with a lot of these, so you got your introduction. Okay, chapter 1 was maximizing minimum potential. So just the little things. Yeah, anyways, maximizing minimal potential. So it's really just like taking the little strengths that you have and working on them and picking them back up. And in each one of these chapters, he goes in like, okay, so he usually has like a podcast to start the chat, like a pre-podcast to start the chapter, and some of them he didn't. Okay, yeah. So he kind of like discusses like his take, and then the meat and potatoes of the actual book is evolution number 1. Now, I don't believe you get these podcasts if you're not listening to the Audible book. So if you get the physical book, you're going to get the imagery. And the narrator who is in the podcast with David Goggins, while they're discussing each podcast, then the narrator reads the evolution. And then they go and they do a summary. So like podcast 1, evolution 1, and then they do podcast 2, which is the conclusion and the kind of like recapping of chapter 1. Then they go into chapter 2. You get these added audibles where you get to hear David Goggins discussing some of this stuff. I didn't, like I said, I didn't read the physical book, but the narrator also describes towards the end, like, man, the imagery of some of the photos of like your swollen knee and all these other things are just phenomenal. And it just like, it really kind of puts you in the zone. Like, wow, now I can actually see what you're describing. You don't really get that. I'm sure Audible has like an appendices that goes along with this. But anyways, that's always why I like it too, because you get to hear, a lot of times you get to hear the author, which is really cool. You get to hear the author, you get to, there's just a lot of different cool things like that, like I believe it was sometimes they don't read the book. Like David doesn't read his book. I've listened to Artie Lang's books before. Like he reads part of it, and then like he goes into rehab, and his buddies, he's like, Artie's a heroin junkie, so I had to fill in today because it's costing him a lot of money to do this, and this guy's broke and needs to sell this book, so I'm doing him a solid. And it's like, that's kind of funny. Not funny because he's in rehab, but it's kind of funny that like he has buddies that are willing to stand up for him, and that's Artie. Like he's a shit show, right? Like that's the like it's par for the course, right? So I'm trying to think who played Princess Leia. Karen Fisher. Carrie Fisher. She read the one book I read of hers. I think she had a couple of them. And one of them's like in my library because it was free. And then it was like I listened to it. Like I was listening to it because it popped up, and then like she died, like that week. And I'm like, listen. And so like I'm finishing the book like after she's dead, listening to her talked about it. Like it's just, I think Matthew Perry, he read his book. That was good. And this isn't about other people's books. This is just like, I guess this is just a general podcast and, just on some of this stuff anyways. But yeah, so he does this. And that's the nice part about why I like the Audible, is because he will listen to podcast 1, podcast 2. He'll be discussing with the narrator why he did this, why he chose that. You get a little bit more in depth. They may have the podcast in the book. Like I said, no knowledge there. Chapter 2, Merry Fucking Christmas. Podcast 3, Evolution 2, Podcast 4, right? So you got your in and outs. And he's describing like, just like the woe is me moments, and then you get how he picked himself up. The mental lab, podcast in, evolution, podcast out, a savage reborn, that was chapter 4. 5 disciplines, discipline of discipline. Like, yeah, you need to hone in discipline just as a metric. You need to discipline your discipline, right? So he talks, it's like little tips of advice that like, he's picked up from the military, he's picked up from friends, he's picked up from experience. These are just the little things like, and it's hard I can't give all this to you in a book. Or in a book review. I can give it to you by saying this is like, here's a roadmap, here's my recommendation. If this book is for you, because maybe you're a slather ass, maybe you don't have discipline, maybe you need some discipline, and maybe you need to look at a shining example of discipline and getting hard and staying, just being the monster, right? He has a dragon in him. He's tamed it, and it's been a phenomenal thing for all of us to watch, to spectate. He's a specimen of human like perseverance. Chapter 6, the art of getting hit in the mouth. So every time he turns around, he's getting slugged with something, and then he just shakes it off. Right? That's the reckoning. And then the last one is play until the whistle. With all the podcasts in and out. Chapter 9. Wringing out the soul. And he does his acknowledgments in his end credits. Something he does discuss in the book, I believe it's either discipline of discipline or the art of getting hit in the mouth. Right around there, it's somewhere around the 60% mark in the book. So in that, he describes like the people that you choose to be in in your foxhole with. So like his pacers when he goes racing and running, he does. When he goes running, he has to. He wants to pick people. Like some of them don't even have experience running, but that's okay because they have qualities in them that he knows he needs in somebody, and that's that's something to look for. Like don't put people in your foxhole that like don't want the best for you, that aren't willing to do what it takes, are not willing to make the tough calls, that are or don't have an attribute that you're looking for, that is far outweighed, right? Like their negative attribute far outweighs their positives, and like they're just gonna drag you down, or they're not gonna be there in the clinch. Like depending on the situation, what people you put around you at that time. And knowing the people around you and the people that you associate with and the people that you can just like think of and be like, this person, that job, this person, this one. I think the discussion to bring back with his of like his childhood with his mom, and there were some revelations that she even bestowed upon him that she had like not told him, and so like we got to hear it like one on one, and you get to hear his mom have the discussion with him, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's it's about growth, man. It's about human, just getting your characteristics in order, getting what you need to get done, and like taking examples and letting them become you, right? Like everyone needs a little David Goggins, right? Like everyone needs that, like. Because otherwise, like, if you don't even have any David Goggins in you, like, you're not getting out of bed. You're gonna be fat and lazy. You're gonna like, so. That's yeah, that's what I got for the book. That's what I got for the book, guys. So that was Never Finished by David Goggins. David, I hope we can get you on the show. You can bring Goggins with you. That would be phenomenal. That would be much appreciated, because we want to meet the man, the myth, the legend, and the body that it inhabits, which is David Goggins, right? So there is if you listen to the book, they talk about there's Goggins and then there's David Goggins, or there's David and Goggins. They're two different, like, he kind of like personifies his last name as the monster, right? The dragon that he has tamed, like the Hulk, right? All of a sudden just knocks David out and Goggins steps in, and it's time to persevere. So, but all right, guys, we'll catch you next time on Life 22.